I'm Charlotte Phillips from the Good Schools Guide, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to the Good Schools Guide Parent Forum, choosing a school for your child with learning needs. I'm also delighted to be joined by experts from three excellent schools, Kingham Hill in Oxfordshire and the Moat and Abingdon House School, which are both in London. I'm extremely grateful to them. I should think they're absolutely frantic with a pile of pandemic-related forms that they're working their way through, or their electronic equivalent, especially with schools about to go back in full from next week. So over the next hour, we're going to hear more about them. We're going to find out about their approach to supporting pupils with SEN. And this is going to be followed by a question and answer session. Working for the Good Schools Guide as an SEN specialist, as I do, we get so many questions from parents about which school is going to be right for their SEN child. It is ridiculous, given that there are an estimated 1.3 million children with SEN in the country of school age. That's about 15% of the school population. So finding a school you would have thought would be incredibly easy. And yet it can be so difficult. Not only that, it can be a really lonely process. We hear so much in terms of calls and emails from parents. We hear statements like, parents who are told that their children are academically able and therefore do not qualify for any form of learning support, which is simply not the case. We hear of schools sometimes, or local authorities, telling parents that only schools can start applying for additional funding via education, health and care plans. And again, this simply isn't true. And while I'd like to think that the fact that local authorities are all working from home isn't a ruse to make it even harder for parents to get in touch, I'm not entirely convinced. And then when it comes to finding out about schools, that can be so hard. How do you know which school to approach? How do you know what support they offer? How do they go about assessing children? What needs do they support? How do they tick? So I'm absolutely delighted that we have our three experts who are going to talk about how they work, what they do, and how they can help. So first of all, we're going to go to Kingham Hill School and Tim Martin, who's the head of learning support and PSHEE. Kingham Hill is in fact, all three schools are reviewed by the Good Schools Guide. It's a really inclusive mainstream school. It has about 300 girls and boys aged 11 to 18. And in its review in the Good Schools Guide, we rave quite rightly about its small class sizes, its atmosphere of tolerance, its calm lessons, and the fact that it has about 20% of its school population with SEN. It's notable for the range of support that it offers. That can be one-to-one support, coaching and mentoring. And what's so wonderful is that the school adapts to the child, rather than, as in so many other cases, the child having to yield to the way that the school operates. And this can make it a marvellous place. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Tim Martin to tell us more about Kingham Hill and their approach. Thank you, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. It's a real joy to be here. So thank you for logging on. I'm sure lots of people are in a busy world that we're in. So here I am sat in one of my favourite places in the school, in the library. It's really beautiful. We're very fortunate that this library was rebuilt a few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. But I just love coming here for sometimes the calmness, and especially at the moment with not many pupils in, it's very, very calm. So here I am enjoying some time with you guys. So really thank you so much for having me. We're in the middle of the Cotswolds. We're right on the Oxfordshire-Gloucestershire border, and I would love to pick up the screen and show you around the whole school, but the internet and the reception of 4G and stuff is not great, so I couldn't rely on you seeing the rest of the school. But I would encourage you, and I'm dreadful at this marketing lot, but I'd encourage you to go and have a look at our website. We are in the most beautiful place. We feel very blessed to be here, so I'd encourage you to do that. One of the first things I talk to when I meet with prospective pupils and prospective parents is we absolutely understand what a really difficult choice there is. Sometimes I get in trouble by the head teacher here because I'll often recommend other schools or think about maybe it's other places that are around, but we know how difficult the choice is, and often we'll work with parents right from the age of pupils, from the age of sort of 6, 7 and 8, to think about the transition into secondary school, to really help them to think about whether a mainstream option is the best option or a specialist provision, which you'll hear from later. So I just know how difficult that is, and I'm a little bit biased in the sense of my little 8-year-old. I've got an 8, 6 and 4-year-old that run rings around me at home. They're very fortunate. I've got a wonderful wife, so she helps as well. But we've got concerns over our 8-year-old, so we're already in the process of thinking of, you know, what's the best next stage for him going into secondary school. So I'm very aware that that's always a difficult thing. The thing that we like to try and do here, and as Charlotte said, we're a very small school. We have around 340 pupils here on the Hill, so we're able to be very inclusive in what we're doing. We're able to be very personalised, very bespoke in what we're doing. I actually live on the Hill as well. I run a boarding house. So one of the things we talk about is being able to come and to see the young people, the pupils in their own environment, whether that be in their prep school or their primary school, because we really want to make sure we put the jigsaw together to make sure actually if Kingham Hill is the right place for your son or daughter, then we're able to meet their needs. And as Charlotte kindly said, because we're small, we're able to not just one size fits all, we're able to be really bespoke and individualised in our approach, which I'll come on to talk about in a minute or two. So first thing to say, we are a mainstream school. A bit about the school, we are a mainstream school. We've been here 130 odd years. We have around 340, 350 pupils. We talk about a personal best culture. This sounds a bit marketing spiel, but we talk about a personal best culture, and the joy of the size of our school as a secondary mainstream is we are able to meet all the individual needs of the pupils. We talk about knowing the pupils. We talk about the pupils not being lost. Now, we're not perfect. We're not saying we're the best school in the world, but we're very aware that some larger schools, you know, things can get dropped and things can get lost just because of the nature of the school. But we're able to say, you know, confidently that we can ensure that the personal development and the character development is something we can really invest in. The big thing alongside that, and it comes right from our headmaster, talks about a personal best culture. We work really hard in developing character, developing confidence. We have an Equip to Flourish program that enables pupils to develop and flourish and grow, not only here at Kingham, but beyond, getting them ready for the real world. And I think it's something that with my 2 hats on of my job, I suppose 3 with the boarding house, but the PSHE, the learning support, you know, mix really well together. So we're able to really push and develop young people. Academically, pupils do sit GCSEs and they do sit A-levels and BTECs going forward. And it really depends on the individual how many subjects that they will take. We range from pupils that take 5 GCSEs all the way through to 10, 11, 12 GCSEs. So we are able to make a bespoke individualised programme if needed. So that's a little bit of an introduction, I guess, of me, a little bit, I guess, a bit of the ethos, a bit about the school. So in terms of our learning support department, the name of our learning support department is Greens. There's 2 quick stories behind it. One, the first ever teacher of learning support was Mrs. Green. And the other story is that it used to be in the green room before people would go and present in the chapel. So you'd have your learning support in the green room. So it became known as Greens. So people go to Greens. I love it. It's a positive colour. It's a growing colour. It's a colour that I think is filled with joy that we can really support and help the pupil. As I said before, we offer bespoke and individualised programmes. So we would look at the need and we do lots of work pre-coming to school, whether that be through an EHCP, an Ed Psych report, talking to the current school SENCO, talking to you guys as parents, and obviously the pupil. But we would do a lot of the background information to think, actually, what can we do to meet the need of your son or daughter? And what provision, what might that look like in the year 7, 8 and 9? What might that look like at GCSE and A-level? So we're really clear on trying to map out a route for the future. We're based at the heart of the school. Greens is right in the middle of the heart of the school. It's not tucked away in a shed in the corner of the field. Absolutely not. We're very much in the heart of what we do here, next to the library, next to the English department, next to the chapel. So we're very much in our main building here on the Hill. There's no stigma attached to greens. We see, as Charlotte mentioned earlier, we see about 22%, if we want to be desperately accurate, 22% of our pupils access greens in some way or another. The joy of that is pupils will just absolutely say, I'm off to greens, there's no stigma attached. And I've taught in schools over the last 17, 18 years, and I'm rubbish at lying. I said this to Charlotte last week, so you can ask me anything, but I think there's no stigma. The pupils are very, very good and clear. They're off to greens to access some additional support, and it's very, very normal. So ranging from a normal week, sometimes we'll see a pupil once in a one-to-one that week. Sometimes we'll see them twice, 3 times. We'll even sometimes see pupils 4 times. That might be as part of their timetable, so they may come out of some lessons, but we have very informal break time, lunch times, meetings that pupils are able to drop in. So we're always accessible. And again, I go back to the size of our school, deliberately the size that we are able to kind of meet the need. As Charlotte said earlier, we offer support for pupils ranging from dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, ADHD, ASD. But the big thing I would say is that we really long for them to be able to access the curriculum. They need some help, they need some strategies, they need some support. And all our teachers, we offer 2 insets a year to all our teachers with a specific focus on learning support. We talk through different strategies. We go through all the pupils and their needs. I meet regularly with every head of department to make sure that that's being flowed through into the school. In our 1st to 3rd form, or year 7 to 9, in our year 7 to 9, we focus clearly on bespoke strategies for our pupils and interventions, for example, spelling, reading programs. And then as they get further through the school in the year 10 and 11, we offer much more subject-specific support. So alongside maybe their maths or their English, will help with some coursework. The joy of going into GCSEs is they can then reduce their options if needed, or they can pick the subjects that they really love to do. Same with A-levels, and we offer a BTEC and CTEC. And often our 6th form will do combinations of courses. It might seem crazy to think 6th form if your son or daughter is quite young, but we offer a combination of different BTECs that we think can really meet the individual. We share, as I'm sure you'll hear later in more detail, but we share lots of strategies that enable the pupil to really flourish in the classroom. So it's not just after learning support, they'll fix the problem. Far from it, that it flows through into our teachers. Our average class size is around 15. We don't have any TA support, but we're able to manage the need of the pupils through our teachers. And I think they're really excellent in how they deliver and differentiate in what they do. Sometimes we're able to make changes mid-year if it becomes too difficult or it becomes too hard. And on the flip side of that, sometimes we have pupils that come and see us in year 7, 8 and 9 and we don't see again in the nicest possible way, that they go on and really fly and flourish and take a full cohort of GCSEs and enable them to grow and develop. And lots of our work around the Equip to Flourish program of personal development is really giving the young people the confidence to fly while they're here. So I've said a little bit about our ethos and about what we do in Greens and learning support and the school. Just to wrap up, going back to the first point, it's such a tough call to make. Where's the right school? How can they meet need? What can they do? You'll get information from us on this website about a bit more about Greens, and on there is my email address. I'm very, very happy to have individual one-to-one conversations to really help and benefit, to grow, to ask lots of questions, to think if this is maybe an opportunity or a right school to go from. So that on the download and the brochure will be more information that you'll be able to get. But like I say, it's such a difficult choice. Certainly thinking through mainstream schools, there's such wonderful schools out there. And even in Oxfordshire, there's lots of great schools. But we think we're slightly different. We think the size of our school. But I'd also really encourage you to have that conversation, to come back to me, to email, to come and visit, for me to come and visit in the prep school, primary school. I'm more than happy to do any of that. So I appreciate you've listened to me for 10 minutes. Thank you so much. I'm sure there may be questions later which I'll field, and I'll hand back to Charlotte now.
Thank you, Tim. That was a really excellent introduction to a school where clearly SEN is so much part of everything that goes on rather than an afterthought. That's really helpful. Thank you. I'd now like to turn to Kun Kleis, who is the headmaster at the Moat School. This London school has about 130 pupils aged 9 to 18, and it supports a range of needs. However, these are very strongly headed by specific learning difficulties. It's recently added a sixth form. Pupils are expected to work towards formal qualifications such as GCSEs. Many of the pupils will have had a really miserable time at their mainstream schools and will have arrived with their confidence pretty much shredded and their self-esteem in tatters. And one of the things that the school really specialises in is helping them to get their confidence back, which is such a huge thing. A bright child can be a very bright child, but if they don't have their confidence, they simply can't learn. And so our description in the Good Schools Guide talks about, among other things, lively drama productions, music making, and happy children. So it's clearly something that they are extremely good at. So welcome, Mr. Kleis.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Tim. I mean, I can only echo that the area where your school is in is a wonderful area, because before the Moat, I was head at Breedon, which is kind of Gloucester area as well, which is a school in the Cavendish group as well. So it sounds like a lovely school. So as Charlotte said, the Moat is Tim refers to a small school. We would then be a very small school because we've got, as Charlotte said, about 130 pupils. But I echo it what Tim said. This is about you as parents making sometimes quite difficult decisions. And when I meet parents, of course, I talk about the Moat, but I also see the point of view of this is a parent trying to find the right school for their child. Having children myself, we all want happy, confident children that are progressing. So this is the main idea behind this forum, is to help people, guiding them towards how you go about finding a good school when your child has SEN needs. So yeah, we start at year 5, we go all the way to year 11 in our site in Bishop's Avenue. We're right next to Craven Cottage football ground and Bishop's Palace. We're by the river. The sixth form, as Charlotte said, has been open in September. This is, by Ravenscourt Park Tube Station, bang in the centre of London, very easy to get to. And our class sizes tend to be between 10 and 12, and we tend to have for every class a teacher and a learning support assistant present in the room. So we do not offer one-to-one support to any young people, but we're basically saying in every class that you are in, there will be 2 professionals assisting you with your work. We support a range of needs, mainly centered around dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, because as parents will know, if your child's got dyslexia, they might also have dysgraphia or dyscalculia. These are our main focuses. And in order to support these young people, what we have is our teachers obviously have their degrees from any recognized university, but on top of that, they have a teaching qualification and an SPLD qualification, a supporting learning difficulties qualification, to make them the best they can be. Because as Charlotte said when she introduced it, our schools are good at adapting to the child's need, rather than these big schools out there who basically say that's the way we teach, and as a child you have to adjust and adapt. We go the other way around. We call ourselves mainstream in structure and specialist in nature. So there are an awful lot of things that we do that are mainstream, and then underneath that is a very specialist support when it comes to what happens in the classroom. Our motto is all children can achieve, and I'm a big believer of that a child with learning needs, it should not stop them from being incredible and amazing at certain subjects. So our young people tend to be very good at the creative subjects, so art, photography, performing arts, design and technology, food technology are real strengths for lots of our young people. And I think it's about finding the balance in your school of supporting your young people with clearly their needs, but also tapping into that potential that I strongly believe every child has. And as Charlotte said, if you create happy, confident children, which we try to do, then you find that all of a sudden they start to blossom and actually their real strength comes out. At the end of year 11, we aim for our young people to sit 7 GCSEs or BTECs. We can stretch to about 8. We don't tend to go more than 8. And the core ones are English language, maths and double science, and then they can choose another 3 or 4 subjects on top of that. In the sixth form, our young people can continue with these GCSEs or BTECs and go to a BTEC level 3 or an A level. Where we stand out as a sixth form is that we also allow young people to resit their maths or English or science GCSE if they haven't passed that at the end of year 11. I think it's very important to acknowledge that not all children will be ready at the same time to sit their maths or English GCSE. And sometimes with a year more of support, all of a sudden they make that click and they can get there. Now, in the sixth form, we're also very keen that we look at their employability and what they're going to be doing next after they come out. So our young people spend 1 day a week doing work experience. So I'm not a strong believer of the one fancy week of work experience in year 10 or year 11. We kind of tend to repeat it every week, 1 day they go to work experience. We've been held back a bit by COVID, let's be honest, but the plan is definitely there to have the young people in the sixth form to have their lessons on 4 days a week, and 1 day a week they go out and experience what working life is really like. And the last thing about our sixth form, so we will have a group of young people that will go to university as a next step. We will have a group that will do some further education courses, but we'll also have a group that will go straight into work. So that's why the employability and giving them these skills is very important. Now, in school, on top of the fact that we've got small class sizes and we have learning support assistants in the room with the young people, we also have a massive and wonderful therapy support network built around it. So we offer speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and counseling as really part of the school. And we will give the young people the frequency of these sessions as they need. Some of it will be dictated by their EHC plans, and others will just be because parents would like their child to have some more occupational therapy or speech and language therapy. When young people come into school, we tend to use GL assessment to kind of see where their baseline data, where they're at, to kind of then put interventions in place to make sure that they can progress and have wonderful outcomes at the end of year 11. The other thing I want to say, although we're in London, it's a very leafy area and we put real emphasis on physical education. It's written everywhere that to keep young people mentally well and healthy, lots of physical activity is very important. So we do 3 hours of PE a week. On top of that, we run lots of clubs before and after school, and we also do bronze, silver and gold Duke of Edinburgh, which I think is another very important one. The other thing we do is that lots of our young people, it's probably the same in the 3 schools that are talking today, find focusing in class quite a challenge, and a 50-minute lesson might sound like a lifetime for some of these young people. So we allow young people to go out for movement breaks in lessons when they feel they need one. So rather than wait on a young person to get in trouble for their potentially lack of attention, we allow them to come out, and LSA will take them out and have a very short movement break. So finally, how does our admissions work? So again, the brochures are uploaded onto the link to this webinar. But we will, when a parent rings in to see, look, can we see if the Moat is the right school for our child? We will ask them to send any relevant paperwork, either specialist reports, diagnosis that's done somewhere, or school reports through, so we can get a read and a feel for the child. When we think at that stage we can meet the young person's needs, then we will invite you in for an interview and a chat with myself. And then actually we will give a pupil the freedom of taking you around our school site and talking you through what the Moat does. And I think there's nothing better than hearing it from the young people who are in our schools. And then at the end of that tour, the registrar will be available to kind of talk further. The next step in the process then is that we invite you in for 2 acquaint days, taster days, where we kind of get a sense of how's it actually working in the class, interaction with peers, what support is needed. And at the end of that process, the admissions team will meet. And if that all goes well, then we'll offer a place. So we take our time to offer a place because we think it's very important that the right decision gets made for these young people. Look, that's a little bit about the Moat, but as said earlier, I'm sure there'll be questions and I'll be happy to try and answer them. So back over to Charlotte.
Thank you very much indeed for your description of a very successful and growing school that's clearly helping children to start, in many cases, enjoying learning again and to start achieving. Now, last but very definitely not least, I'd like to introduce Tanya Moran, who's the head teacher of Abingdon House School. Abingdon House supports children from the age of 5, though currently their youngest child is in year 3, and it has a really distinctive approach. So it's looking at the support that children need rather necessarily than the diagnostic label, though obviously that comes into things as well. And that means that it takes a wider range of needs than, say, the Moat. And there are a large number of therapists on site. Well-being and happiness is a really big factor here. And the Good Schools Guide review talks about pupils starting the day by walking the school dog, for example. What could be nicer? So I'd like to hand over to Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you for putting this forum together. It's so encouraging to kind of be in a virtual room with other SEN professionals where we can all talk about our needs to pull together and work as a team with families and external professionals to find the right school for the right child at the right time. And we really need to work together as a community. And I appreciate this is only 3 of the schools, but just that strength of that really comes through and is just really encouraging for our students now and moving forward. As Charlotte said, I'll give you a little bit of information about Abingdon House. So we have a roll of 90 students at Abingdon House School and College. We go from the age of 5 to 19. We opened up our post-16 college provision this academic year. And so we are able to be in all through school starting at the age of 5, and students may stay with us all the way to 19. Our class sizes are based on 10 students, and every class has a full-time teacher and teaching assistant, as well as very commonly a therapist in the room as well, and I'll get on to that in a little bit. We have 3 distinct sections of the school. We have our junior school, our senior school, and our college. We are all under one roof, but we have very different kind of processes and procedures in the different areas of the school, so the children are very much going through all the regular milestones of growing up with different responsibilities, leadership opportunities across the school. Our student cohort is very much mixed. I'll talk about the style of school we are in a minute, but and how we can determine if we are the right school for each student. But our student cohort is a mixture of students who have diagnoses ranging from autism, specific learning difficulties, ADD, ADHD, social communication difficulties, sensory processing disorder, and other associated needs. But has already been alluded to, while there might be a primary diagnosis that a child has, of course, this whole cocktail of comorbidity underneath it or need underneath it. And when we focus our teaching and our therapy, we're focusing on the underlying challenges that all these special educational needs tend to have, such as social communication, processing speed, working memory, executive functioning, sensory integration, self-regulation, and very highly anxiety and well-being. We are a mainstream style specialist school. So much like Kuhn said, we operate very much in a mainstream style. So all the normal things that you'd expect to see in a mainstream school with your productions, your lessons, school trips, and the experiences are the same at Abingdon House, but obviously we are a much smaller environment, classes of 10, with experts and specialists working with the children to ensure that they can access the curriculum and the therapy and really thrive both personally and academically. For our curriculum and our qualifications, we do follow the national curriculum, but of course we adapt it to support the students and their needs. Our students all have very spiky profiles, so there will be areas where they're studying at an age-appropriate level, and indeed areas where they may be behind age-appropriate expectations or indeed above age-appropriate expectations. To that end, we don't designate our classes by year group. Rather, we have a theme every year. This year, the students chose human rights activists as their theme, and every class has a specific class name associated with that. Within those classes, normally you would have 2 year groups. In that, sometimes even 3, depending on the student's individual profile. So could be a year 7-8 split, could be a year 3-4 split. And those classes are based on social and peer connection as well as common need. When they go through their academic day, they'll have lessons with that core form class, but also when it comes to our core subjects of maths and English, we stream by ability to ensure that the students are studying at a developmentally appropriate age, and they're continually assessed and might move throughout those streams. We offer a range of qualifications at Key Stage 4, and we actually start them for most of our classes in year 7. Our qualifications are focused on the functional skills and vocational qualifications that all carry GCSE equivalencies. So our focus is to ensure that we keep the doors open for all of our students for whatever their next stage of academics might be. But we do find for our students that the way that the functional skills and vocational qualifications are assessed plays much more to their strengths, whereas cognitively they may be able to access the GCSE curriculum. However, going through that process of learning for 2 to 3 years to sit a 3-hour exam is not properly demonstrating where their skills are. All of these qualifications, as I said, are in line with the national curriculum, and they just provide us more flexibility and appropriate assessment so our students can really thrive. As Charlotte spoke about, one of the big strengths of the school is our integrated therapy approach and intervention. So we are committed to ensuring all of our students are holistically supported to develop skills and strategies in order to achieve independence and live fulfilling and productive lives. So while academics is very important, of equal importance and weightings and focus at the school is mental health, well-being, and personal development of life skills and social skills. Well-being is very much at the core of all we do. If a child can be confident and understand where their needs are, know where to go for support, and have strong well-being, they can access the curriculum. Without those interventions and supports, they can be very much lost. Our integrated therapy, we have speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and emotional therapists on site. And while they'll work one-to-one and in small groups with students as required, much of their work is integrated directly into the classroom. So they will lead directly on social skills and life skills lessons every week, where the therapist will take the lead, but the teaching team is also present in the room at the time. And what's fantastic about that is we're ensuring that there is a consistency of approach and support for every individual child across the school at all times, so the teaching team is able to carry on the work of the therapy team. Also, that flips itself, that the therapists also attend our core lessons during the week. So the teaching team is leading the lesson, but the therapists are there to support speech and language and occupational needs and helping them to access the curriculum. And also being able to do it in small groups and class sizes means that the children can actually generalize their skills as they are learning them, so with their peers at the time. So therapy at Abingdon House School is provided on 3 levels across the school. So we have the universal approach. This is what is provided to all students at all times by all staff. So our whole school approaches, such as things like social thinking, zones of regulation, positive behavioral support. Then we have the targeted level, which is focused on the specific needs of the individual students and delivered by staff with specific training in those areas. And then finally, we have the specialist, which is again focused on the individual needs of the child and provided by our trained and qualified teaching and therapy staff. So each student receives a full multidisciplinary and individualized approach to their learning and development. We do go from 5 to 19, but children change and they develop. And what's really important to us at all times is that every child that is with us is making progress. And over their time with us, it might be that a child is making exceptional progress and is able to go for the next challenge. And we work very closely with the Moat, as we're in the same group with Cavendish Education, but also other SEN schools, to ensure that if a child is requiring the next challenge but seems to need to still remain in specialist, that we're able to look at getting them placed into a school that may offer the full cohort of GCSEs, because that is where they are at now, and that's what they should be accessing. Also, at the same time, we have students who will transfer out of specialists and back into mainstream education. It's very much individualized for every child who is with us. And again, both like Tim and Kuhn have said, how to apply to the school. What's so incredibly important for parents is that you're able to get into schools and see it for yourself, get the feel, is this possibly the right school for my child at this time? So we offer tours when the world was normal. We are restarting them again, so that you can get in and really get a feel for the school. Then we would ask for all the paperwork to be sent, which we look at very carefully with the admissions team to make sure that we think we can meet need and have the right provision. And if we do feel that is the case, your child would be offered a 2-day trial at the school, which is very much a two-way trial where they get to come in and experience the school for themselves, and we can experience how well we can support their needs, and then we can go from there. So it is a difficult choice, and I really do encourage parents to, where they can, get out there. In the time of COVID, where we haven't been able to open the school up as much, we have an admissions team at the end of the phone who's very, very helpful and happy to speak to you about your child's specific needs and how we might be able to help. Again, I'm sure there's lots of questions, but Charlotte, I will hand back over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely terrific. I'm so grateful to all of our three speakers who have provided excellent introductions to their schools. We have indeed had a number of questions. What I'm going to do is focus on those questions where there's a more general application and where I think it might be useful to many parents, rather than focusing on the questions that relate perhaps to very specific queries about which school should I choose for my child. And I see in one instance we have a question that's addressed to one of our speakers. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that. That's actually for the Moat School, but I'm sure that's something that you would be happy to take up with that parent after this session. That's great. Thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to turn to the first question, which is, how do I begin choosing a school for my child with dyslexia? So what sort of things should you take into account? And I'm going to ask Mr. Kleiss perhaps to take this question. How on earth do you start considering what might work?
Well, I think it's finding the right match between your child's needs and what the school can offer, I think is very important. So, I mean, it's a very difficult one to answer just with that one statement. But basically, I think it would depend on academically to what extent your child is able to do certain qualifications. I would always look at what is the end game of the school. So what are the outcomes that the school wants to achieve? And if the outcomes is, like in the Moat's sake, 7 GCSEs, if you think your child is capable of that, then I would look at a school like that. And then I think, secondly, I would also look at, can you see your child in a school like the one you're looking at? So I think taking your time to go around, talk to people, talk to pupils, maybe talk to parents who have children in the school you're looking at would be very important. I mean, if your child is diagnosed with dyslexia, then if you go to a school that specializes in dealing with children with dyslexia, you will be sorted in that way, and you'll find that in most cases class sizes are small, teachers have on top of their normal qualifications additional qualifications, there's therapy support around. But I think it will be very important to find a place where your child feels at ease, would be my answer to that.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. I've now got a question which I think I might pose to Tim. And this one is, for a child with dyspraxia, can mainstream schools support them adequately? How would that work? What would be your thoughts, Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. Straight away, yes, is what we would say here at Kingham. And again, the joy is that we're able to make the curriculum bespoke. And I'm sure lots of mainstream schools do. So a child with dyspraxia, may have difficulties across the board. We're very proud of our extracurricular and our sport and all the other stuff that comes into a day here on the Hill. But we're also very aware, as both the other panelists have said, that actually, the character development, the personal development and the confidence, like we would never take a pupil out of a subject that they flourish and love and enjoy, we would also never put people in to situations that they feel, is going to cause a sense of embarrassment or worry or anxiety or stress. And the joy that we're able to do with that is to look at the timetable, to look at the curriculum, to look at the individual people and to see actually where are these pinch points, where are these difficulties that may arise due to a learning need, and actually how can we make sure that that's protected as well as supported as well as nurtured. So not just cuddling them and saying it's okay, we don't need you to access, because we really want to push and enable this to flourish. But I think we're able to look at the individual and look at where those difficulties may lie and be able to put intervention in those times needed. And again, it comes back to all the, we talk about well-being. I know these are all buzzwords, but actually, from hearing the other two guys speak as well, like the individual, the raising of the personal development, the character development, all those feeds into all that confidence and the flourishing, and we have that at the heart of what we have here. So hopefully, Charlotte, that sort of answers your question in a waffly kind of way.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to turn to Tanya. This is a question about a child who does not have one specific identified need, by which I take it that this child has several needs. How does this affect the parent's choice of school? Again, how should she perhaps start that search?
No, that's a very good question. I think the first thing to note is there are a number of special needs schools out there, and indeed mainstream schools with support, that will state that they are taking a specific approach, so a dyslexia specific approach or an autism specific approach. And depending on what the primary diagnosis is and how your child is requiring to be taught, you might find that schools that are specializing in that way give the right support. Whereas other schools such as ourselves, and I think what the other two panelists are speaking at too, is we can cater for a wider range because we're not taking one specific approach of ASD or dyslexia. What we're doing is we're looking, like I said, at the underlying challenges that go along with those needs. I think also taking a look at how the school is structured. So for instance, an autism specific school will tend to have a much more fluid timetable with regards to where the students need to be and when, and the choices around that. But when we state we're something such as a mainstream style school, that's to give parents the context of we run distinct lessons with transitions in between and what this classroom setup would be. So it is very much about the style of teaching and learning that your child is requiring in order to have their needs supported. Does that work, Charlotte?
Thank you very much indeed, Tanya. That's absolutely great. This is a question perhaps for Tim, which is, should you schedule an appointment with the SENCO before you think about formally applying to a school to understand the fit? Which is I know quite a tricky one. At what point do you get in touch, and what information would you be getting back?
No, good question. I love it. I love having prospective parents. Like I say, the marketing side and the admission side, if they're listening, probably tell me off, but I'm very happy to do lots of the groundwork before to talk about our school and whether we can meet needs, read reports, ed sites, EHCPs to really try and help. And I think I can't talk on behalf of other SENCOs in other schools, but I think it's really important to get it right. So, you know, lots of the groundwork that goes in, we may not see the people actually stepping foot in our school, but it's helped the parent to make a decision on, okay, well, Kingham Hill maybe isn't the right place for my son or daughter. So absolutely, I'd encourage going to that SENCO. Lots of my work is dealing with prospective parents and talking through what we can offer, what we can't offer, what we feel we can meet need. And that ranges all the way from meeting pupils, like I say, in their prep or primary schools, to coming for a tour, coming for a visit, even before all of it, we've got anywhere near thinking whether it's the right place. And I think that's absolutely fine to be doing that groundwork, that legwork before. And I can talk about for me, obviously, and probably the other guys, absolutely being in contact and having those conversations, I think are really, really important without the worry of, is it tying me into anything? I've taken his time, do I need to make sure? No, absolutely right. That if it's not the right choice from the parent side or from the school side, then that's made clear before anything further goes. So I would encourage it, 100% encourage, do get in contact.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. Perhaps this is actually one I think perhaps we could ask all three of our panelists to answer. It's a question that we get asked very often at the Good Schools Guide, which is how schools stand on behavioural needs, because it can be quite an issue. You sometimes have children, I know, who, because they're unhappy, perhaps their behaviour is not quite as it should be. With others, there is a distinct, a separate diagnosis relating to behavioural needs, and that can be something that needs support throughout a child's school career. So I wonder if I could go in reverse order, perhaps starting with Tanya, then moving to Kun, and then perhaps Tim.
No, absolutely. Excellent question. So what we'd say is all students have behavior. All students, neurotypical, neurodiverse, have behaviors that we need to support. And that is a very different thing, especially for our children who a lot of them have struggled through mainstream, are very frustrated, and the behavior is a function of those frustrations and not having the right interventions and support. We can very much support that behavioral support at Abingdon House School, but that is something that is very, very different than a child who has a diagnosable behavioral need, which is currently their primary need. When that is the case, they very much need a school that is focused on supporting that behavioral need as the primary function. It's a whole other area of specialism, because supporting the behavior first is what is going to then allow them to access the curriculum. So it might seem like there's a fine line between that, but I think what you would find in a lot of specialist schools is a very much understanding of the differences between those. Of course, there are behaviors that come for students with special educational needs, but the difference between that and the primary diagnosable behavioral need.
Yes, Tanya, I totally agree. I don't think I've got much new to say. My view would be that we almost have to think, will the behavior issues disappear if they get the support that we offer? So to echo what Tanya said, and I'm sure Tim's no different, there will be frustrations built up by young people because they haven't been heard in previous school experiences. So there might be some kind of behavior coming from that, but you would see that dropping off quite quickly the minute you put the right support in place. But the second thing I also want to say is that lots of our young people, and again, I'm talking about all three of our schools and lots of other schools with SEN needs, is the young people benefit from a very calm and nurturing environment. And you want to avoid one young person with severe behavior needs disrupt that equilibrium, that calmness. So my summary would be, if we think with our support the behavior issues will disappear, we would look at a child like that. If we think it's a primary need, as Tanya said, then probably a school like the Moat wouldn't be the right one.
Yeah, I'd only echo those two things, Charlotte, if I'm honest. I think the intervention is right. If we can put the right intervention in place that deals with the frustrations they may have got from not being able to access the literacy, the numeracy, whatever that looks like in a mainstream, and we can target that to lower the level of frustration or annoyance or anger that then can lead to accessing classrooms. But they both put it beautifully and eloquently, much more so than I can. So well done.
Thank you to all three of you. That's super. This, in fact, perhaps leads on, and I'd like to address this one to Tanya, which is what I should be asking a school when looking for somewhere for a child with ADHD, a young child. What would be the questions to ask about support?
I think very much you're wanting to understand how the school day is structured and what specific supports and interventions are obviously in place for students for ADHD. And I think one of the big things is obviously understanding the support that is in place to help the student self-regulate. So the flexibility and a curriculum and a approach that is allowing the child to understand the challenges that they have and be able to put the right strategy in place at the right time, i.e., as Kuhn said earlier, do they require a movement break? Are they able to, within the classroom, have different supports, whether it's a fidget toy or the OT style supports that could help with the focus and the attention in the lesson. So you're looking for a flexibility of approach within the classroom, allowing the student to access, but also be able to manage the challenges that they're finding, that has to be supported in equal measures. The rigidity of the classroom environment can really exasperate children with ADHD. Also, what their behavioral support and behavioral management plans looks like within the school. Again, the behavior that a child is exhibiting with ADD and ADHD is a function. It's not a naughty child, for lack of a better word. It is a part of the challenges they have, and where it can go so wrong for students is when that behavior is interpreted as naughty behavior and then becomes a punitive measure. That is just a cyclical relationship with it down a slippery slope. So what does their behavioral support look like? And if a child isn't able to do what they're meant to be doing, how does the school work to support them to get it right, as opposed to the punitive approach? I think those are the two main things I would be starting with.
Thank you very much indeed, Tanya. Perhaps I could ask Kuhn this question, which is, when is it useful to think about getting specialist reports? It can be very difficult. It can also be incredibly expensive if you're having to look at funding them yourself. And what can they tell you about a child in terms of finding a suitable school?
Well, in my experience, getting a specialist report, and I totally take the point that they're expensive. When you're looking at a report regarding dyslexia, I would definitely not start any earlier than a child being in year 2, year 3. I think it's very difficult to have any meaningful information from a specialist dyslexia report at a younger age. For us as a school, they're very useful. They're very detailed, very informative. And it's when we make a decision on can we meet the need of a child, having a specialist report is really handy. But that doesn't mean I don't support what this person is saying, that they're expensive and not easy to get. I mean, I would always say you could knock on the door of a school like ours and ask a bit of guidance in, how do I get a specialist report? We could always direct you to the right people. We don't do them in school ourselves because we don't think it's right to make money out of that. But I think there would be nothing wrong with going to school and not having a specialist report just yet, but having maybe school reports that show that pupils are struggling in English or history, they're a bit behind in their reading age. We always do, as part of our acquaint sessions, we do a very basic spelling and reading assessment, which will give us some idea of where the child is. So you don't need a specialist report. Yes, I agree they're very expensive, but I also want to say they are very informative. And very often you might say, right, now I understand why my child is like that, or gets stressed about that, or struggles with that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much indeed. We've had a question about preparation for exams, which I'm going to broaden slightly and ask Tim about this one. So given that children with dyslexia can find it difficult to prepare for exams, what would your advice be to children who have perhaps had limited support at primary school and who are now expected to sit entrance exams and are finding the whole thing difficult? How can they be helped?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's one of the questions we look at quite a lot going throughout the school in terms of exam technique, revision technique, study skills technique. It's something we actually focus on quite a lot in school because, as you say, lots of pupils, well, we're 11 plus, but lots of pupils from 11 upwards will be sitting end of topic tests or end of year exams, and then that builds up to GCSE and A level. There are lots and lots of helpful things out there for revision strategy, for study skills guidance. I mean, similar to what Cohen said, I think seeking the advice, coming to a specialist or a school and say, what do you do? And I think the thing we talk about here in terms of sitting entrance exams is we try and make it as informal as possible. It's one part of our jigsaw. I know other schools are very different, and I appreciate that, but it's one part of our jigsaw that they would come and sit an exam in a lovely environment. Anyone with a learning need would do it with one of us in greens, usually me. We'd have a hot chocolate. I'd read some of the questions, we'll help them, because that's what you'd get in school. You get help from a teacher. So we try and make it as real as it would be here. I guess it's trying to remove the worry and the stress and the anxiety, making fun games if they're younger, if they're primary school or prep school age, pinning big pictures, colourful things on the wall to try and remember things, try and make it a game out of it, enjoying it over having informal conversations over dinner. I'm just thinking of all the stuff I do with my 8-year-old when he's practicing his spellings. So it's those types of things. But we try and remove the stress. My goodness, try and remove the stress of it here at Kingham. But I would say if you are not sure, and I love that from Cohen saying, almost come and knock on the door, come and ask a question. I seek some kind of specialist advice, I think I would certainly go to.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. We have had a number of questions, and I'm so sorry that we've not been able to answer all of them. But I would say that if they relate to a specific school, please do feel free to get in touch with them. Also, we have a number of resources on the Good Schools Guide website, so please do look there as well if there's any general information. I'd just like to thank you so much, panelists, for your wonderful contributions and for telling us about how the schools work. Thank you very much indeed. It's been wonderful, especially at such a busy time. If you have any concluding remarks, please do feel free to say them now. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to our audience who've taken the time off to come and listen to us. There will be a recording available and a link will be sent through to them. Thank you.